we can't talk about this infinite doors and alternate realities business in Bioshock without briefly mentioning the famous thought experiment based on the properties of quantum superposition known as Schrodinger's cat. Now, I should say, in my younger years, in my 20s, I read a lot of quantum physics books. I was obsessed with quantum physics. And I read a lot of books. Fred Alan Wolf, Starwave. I read all kinds of crazy books. And I didn't understand half of it. But I did understand Schrodinger's cat. And it's been fascinating. And I did kind of sort of understand a little bit about the quantum world and just the main takeaway of it being just so darn contrary, paradoxical to the world that we live in. So if the player hung around after the credits roll in Bioshock Infinite, they will find themselves in Booker's dingy apartment one last time. We hear what I would, in my estimation, we would call like baby music or something. So it's kind of an auditory cue that we're to think of Anna, right? The baby. And Booker says Anna and proceeds to enter her room. However, the scene abruptly fades to black, which is intentional, of course, leaving the audience to decide for themselves if Anna is there or not. Now, this ambiguity it's interesting because there's a storytelling element of this ambiguity and a very, obviously, if you're familiar with quantum physics, there's a scientific ambiguity or paradox as well. So this ambiguity was inspired by the well-known Schrodinger's cat quantum thought experiment. This ending is inspired by this quantum thought experiment, which essentially results in the paradoxical conclusion that Anna is both in her cradle and not in her cradle at the very same instant, until Booker can directly observe it, which collapses one possibility in favor of another. So if you're not familiar with Schrodinger's cat, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's plenty of videos on YouTube where you can get some background information about this. It's basically an idea of, okay, you have a cat in the box and there's a poison and there's a 50% chance the poison will be released. And so what's the probability of the cat being alive or dead? But if you're not directly observing the cat, so let's say you can't observe the cat at all, then the idea proposed by Schrodinger is that, well, since you can't directly observe, because what happens when you observe things in the quantum world is you can observe, like, for example, you can observe its momentum, but you can't observe its velocity, or you can observe its velocity, but not its momentum. You can do one or the other, but not both. So the idea is with the cat in the box, and you can't observe it, but you know it's in there, and there's a 50% chance the poison is released. So Schrodinger put forward the thought experiment. He says, well, I guess it's both alive and dead. So the probability is equal. It's alive and dead at the same time until you observe it, and then that only results in one possibility. So that's kind of the idea. If that makes any sense. So according to the laws of quantum theory and what scientists understand so far about the quantum world, until Schrodinger's cat is directly observed in the theoretical box where poison has been placed inside, the probability that it is alive and the probability that it is dead are equal until such a time that the cat is directly observed in the box. And so with Bioshock Infinite, we are left with the classic ambiguous ending where the audience is left to theorize and speculate to their heart's content. Is Anna in the cradle or not? We don't know because it fades to black and we have no idea. Although in this case, the ending isn't just a storytelling ploy per se, but it's because, with storytelling, that's a classic ploy, right? You're going to have, you're going to leave something to the audience's imagination. But rather, the entire game, Bioshock Infinite, really is one big quantum theory science experiment, if you think about it, where the paradox of both possibilities exist at the very same time. Something which flies in the face of the non-contradictory identification we use to logically navigate our world, and yet it remains a paradox which really does seem to govern the universe that we all inhabit, including Bioshock Infinite.